Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast with Christine Luken, the financial dignity coach. In this podcast, we help you recover a positive and peaceful relationship with your personal finances. We do this by bringing together wise money management with emotional intelligence. Join us for this journey where we navigate our relationship with money as Christine Luken draws from years of experience and guest experts to help you get to the root of your money issues.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast. I am your host, Christine Luken. I'm honored to welcome my special guest, Josh Ackerman, financial life planner. Josh joined his father's financial services firm in 2006. His planning process is focused on helping clients express their own definition of true wealth. This involves more in-depth discussions than most financial firms offer. Josh lives in beautiful Lexington, Kentucky with his wife, Sarah, and he has 2 children in college. Welcome, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I am amazing. Summer, it's my favorite season. So.
See, there we go. Perfect.
We're both in Kentucky. Summer in Kentucky is gorgeous.
It is indeed. It really is.
But we didn't come about summer. We've got some more important things to talk about today. So, Josh, your financial planning firm helps family businesses to successfully transition ownership between generations. And I understand that you are a second generation financial planner. Tell us the story of how you came to work for your dad and how that's shaped the direction of your business.
Sure. So I was working at Lexmark, printer company, international printer company in Lexington, and going to lunch with Dad. And I remember the day. I could probably come up with a date if I tried hard. And Dad and I were going to lunch. We were talking about what he does in his job and what I do in my job and the stresses and where the stress comes from in his world, where the stress comes from in my world. And I remember saying to him, you are much more yourself when you talk about work than I think I am when I talk about work. In other words, I think I had to kind of put on a persona in the corporate world to fit in, to do what I felt like I was supposed to be doing. And Dad didn't do that. And so that was very attractive. The idea of be myself more completely was really attractive.
And get paid for it.
And get paid for it. Exactly. So I came back to the office and I had 2 friends that were getting married to each other that weekend. And I thought, I could help these 2 friends figure out how they're going to deal with money in their new relationship. Or I could sell 30,000 overstock inkjet printers to Big Lots. Because that was part of my job at the time. And so on that day, I sold the printers to Big Lots and I signed up for the first education course in the certified financial planning curriculum. Because I had decided, okay, it's time to go do something else. And how it shaped the practice, it has been tremendously valuable to me to have. Dad got into the life insurance business in 1980. So at the time, I had somebody with 26 years of experience literally down the hall. So if I had a question or a concern or how do I explain this to the client, I could go to Dad and lay out the facts, and Dad would look at the situation and say, okay, I think you should start here, go here, finish here. And it saved me a lot of effort, I think. Dad was the one who would tell me, I'd come in for a meeting, I'd walk into Dad half an hour before the meeting and say, here's what I'm going to say. I had everything all laid out. And he would look at it and say, there's too many numbers on this presentation. No one's going to remember all these numbers. You need one number here, a story, and then another number. And the story is going to explain how the two numbers are connected. But no one's going to remember the number, and the number doesn't matter. What they're going to remember is the story. And so that was phenomenal. And that's really, I think, what got me down the path that we're on now, which is very much, what are the questions? Dad named the company Context Financial, and it's the context of the question. I can't answer the question until I understand the context. And so that's where the work is. And once we understand the context of the question, the answers generally are fairly obvious to both us and to the client. Or at the very least, if I say to the client, we're going to do this in order to get you to whatever the goal was, it's understandable. Oh, okay. By doing this, I get the result we talked about. Instead of me trying to sell, features and benefits like in the old printer days, right? Trying to explain to you why you need this. Far better to start with, this is where we're trying to go. And I have at most aided you in identifying the things that matter to you. So it's very much the client's plan. And then I make sure that there are no obvious flaws from a financial perspective in that vision, that we aren't missing something.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought up a couple good points. I mean, obviously, I know people get so annoyed when I do this, but it's all about context. When people ask you a question, you have to say it depends, because it all depends on the context.
Yes.
And I'm sure when we're talking about transitioning family businesses, it is all about the context. But one other thing I wanted to kind of drive home to people is that, you learned things while going through getting your CFP designation. I've had friends who have done that. I know it is a grueling process and there's a lot of things that you have to learn. But what you're doing in your family's business is you are preserving that legacy of knowledge that your dad has, that he didn't get from a course, that he didn't get from a book, that he got from real life.
Well, that's a great point. I had not seen it that way. I'm going to steal that. I will credit you in the footnotes of marketing material going forward. Definitely. I think I have gone and done some training that has maybe refined the process of working with clients and helping them understand what matters. But you are entirely correct. It is 100% doing business the way that Dad did business, and using much the same philosophy, certainly, if not the same questions. Dad would get to the questions or get to the information through seemingly disconnected conversations. And I remember sitting in meetings with Dad, watching him talk to clients and listening to him ask questions and thinking to myself, why are we walking down this conversational rabbit trail? This doesn't make any sense. And then kind of watching him pull it back together and going, oh, this one connected to that one, and that one connected to something that this person said at lunch. And even Dad wouldn't tell you that was all 100% intentional, right? He wasn't the master architect behind, he wasn't Columbo, the detective who kind of seemingly fumbles through, but is actually getting somewhere. Dad does it by being genuinely interested in other people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
And so he does it by lots of lunches, lots of conversations about things that have no bearing on money.
Yeah,
And
it's about relationships.
yeah, it's about relationships, it's about trust, it's about understanding and allowing the other person to dream in your presence. You know, one of the constructs of the financial services industry is that the client comes into the advisor's office for the first meeting, and the advisor says, well, please list, give me your name, your address, the best phone number to reach you, and write down your top 3 goals.
They're like, not run out of money.
Well,
leave some to my kids.
Yep. Yeah. And interestingly, science tells us that studies of the way our brains work as humans tell us that we don't know an answer. We don't have an answer to that question.
Right. Not a real answer.
Not a real answer. Exactly. Any answer we get that I get as an advisor is going to be some combination of, what do I think Josh wants me to say? What does my spouse, who's probably sitting next to me, want me to say? And what are the last couple commercials I saw?
That's true.
Right? And so, and to go back to dad, by being the person who would ask a prospective client, what did you want to be when you were a kid? And have a very serious, very honest conversation about, I really kind of wanted to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
And talk about what being a cowboy meant to 5-year-old you growing up in Nebraska. What did that mean? Mm-hmm. And there isn't anybody else, and Dad said this to me very early in my career, we have a license to ask questions that nobody else asks.
Yeah.
There may very well not be anyone in the client's life who has ever asked them, what did you want to be when you were 6?
Yeah.
And
you're plugging into those dreams, those deep-seated
exactly.
dreams.
Right.
And it's like, are your investments supporting that? That's important.
And exactly right. And so the real value, I think, of the conversations is in plugging into the dreams, as you very correctly said, and then take the knowledge and the understanding of the financial world and kind of overlay that on top of the dreams and see if we can, will the math support the dream? And once you can plug into the dream, as you said, that's a whole different thing than, I don't want to run out of money. I want to leave some to my kids. I'd like to go to Italy. Right? And so you get those 3 answers, and 2 of them are very generic and what they thought I was supposed to say. And the third one that often they'll say, but they'll say a little quieter, or they'll blurt it out. And I'm sure you see this in your world. And they're kind of look at you like, oh, I can't believe I said that out loud. And on my side, I have written down Italy and underlined it twice and circled it 2 or 3 times because there's something there, right? That connected to something. And I'd love to understand what that was.
Well, and I think that personal touch is something that family business, whether it's financial services or anything else, is what attracts that loyalty. So let's talk about some of these issues with family business.
Sure.
One of the most obvious issues that business owners face when transitioning ownership to their adult children is the financial piece of it. What are some options that your clients use and potential pitfalls to avoid?
So the pitfall, and I cannot swear to the actual numbers in this story, but the scale is accurate. So we had a client, two clients actually, father and son. Father had started a business and transitioned the business to his son. And father was out of the business, traveling, duck hunting pretty much every day that it was legal in the United States of America, and taking out probably $120,000 out of the business annually for income. That was his retirement. Son was at home in Lexington working in the business and getting paid $40,000 a year. And the obvious disconnect there, and it's a broken record, and it's a scary thing to say to a business owner, but the pitfall is not planning soon enough, not allowing yourself to have the thought and then to have the conversations around, I'm not going to own this forever. I may not want to own this forever. And what I think happened in that case is the father/founder woke up one day and said, I don't want to do this anymore. And luckily for him, or unluckily, had his son in the business and had a successor, but hadn't thought before the Tuesday morning that he woke up and said, I'm done, hadn't thought about, how do I get out of this thing? How do I move on? And with some time, we could have put together a plan where we could have looked at, does this asset provide enough income for two people? What's that income look like? And worked a plan instead of making the decision Tuesday morning and then, by Friday trying to have the new process in place. And my son is now the CEO, and we've changed a legal document, and I'm done. So it's a broken record because it's what everyone says, but it's really a matter of, let's talk about it early.
Well, and I think just having those expectations and what's fair, right?
Yeah. Well,
certainly you have to compensate the person who, the whole reason the business exists is because this person took a risk a decade,
certainly.
2 decades, 3 or 4 decades ago. But then it also needs to be attractive to the adult child that's stepping into the business.
Right. Yeah.
It's got to be fair for everyone. So,
right.
And I'm sure there can be disagreements about that. So I guess you play mediator and kind of
there's some mediator
picture kind of things.
Yeah, there's some mediation, and I think what it really comes down to is, for both the business owner generation, what do you want? And then for the successor generation, what do you want? And at current course and speed, if dad steps out of the business, if dad wakes up on a random Tuesday and says, I'm done, what happens? Or mom, certainly, what happens? And what are the relative incomes for the founder, for mom, and son, given the way the business is currently structured? And we would do the exact same process with individuals who weren't business owners who come in to talk about retirement. The first calculation we run is we assume neither, if the clients are married, neither spouse ever makes another dollar. And this is what your current savings plus Social Security plus other assets, this is the lifestyle that supports. And if you would like to have a higher standard of living, then we need to save some more money. Every once in a while, we get a client who looks at those numbers that are, you're never make another dollar, and says, oh, maybe I'm done sooner than I thought. Right? And so I think it's important to kind of get the baseline conversation first. This is what it would look like if you quit. And this is where the money would come from to pay you. And this is what the business would have left to pay your successor. And then let's talk about where we want to go.
Dare to enter the Wealthy Woman Book Club, where answers exist to forbidden questions, where women of all ages and income secretly gather, where knowledge is shared, where possibilities are explored, where women claim their power. Dare to stay a spell in the Wealthy Woman Book Club. In this place, we lift each other up. In this place, we start dreaming again. In this place, we see financial miracles. In this place, we grow through the glory and the failure. In this place, we step into a new identity. Dare to champion the Wealthy Woman Book Club. We're creating a future where women are financially empowered across the globe. We're creating a future where our daughters stand on equal financial footing with our sons. We're creating a future where we purchase with our principles rather than price tags. We're creating a future where we use the power of money for the benefit of people and the planet. Welcome to the Wealthy Woman Book Club. Dare to come in, woman. Come in. Join us at wealthywomanbookclub.com.
And I'm sure there's a variety of ways to do this where, you kind of phase somebody out as an employee, or you do an outright sale of the business. You and I were chatting beforehand. I'm a silent partner in the family business. My dad started his business in 1989. Now, he started it with 4 partners, and 3 of those 4 partners, continued with him. One's now retired. My dad's been semi-retired for, probably 14 years.
Sure.
He draws a small salary.
Yep.
But he also owns the building that the company is in. And so he gets the rent from the building. And that was really his retirement plan, because he took that personal risk to have the building built. And, he was on the line personally for that loan for all those years.
Sure.
But it's been interesting because my brother and I both worked in the business. My brother still works in the business. I worked in the business actively for 13 years and then left to become a financial coach. And now I'm back in as a silent partner, which you and I chatted is like the best way to be in family business, because it's like, you get the profit sharing checks, but you don't have to be involved in any of the day-to-day stuff. But, there's a lot of moving parts. And sometimes a family business, like our family business, it's not just one family that's affected. There's multiple families that are part of this business. And there's 2 generations from 2 different owners that are involved in the business, and definitely makes for some interesting Thanksgivings sometimes.
Yes. No, and I think that is one of the goals, is to have, as best we can, and from coming from that world, there is probably no way to take all of the emotion out of the conversation.
Oh, you can't.
Right. But I do think from some exposure and some practice, we can get the conversations to be more focused on problem solving and more focused on, and you just explained a wonderful solution for your father, which is a small salary in exchange for a very reduced schedule, doing the things that your dad is really good at, or maintaining the relationships that he has that, go back 40 years, that is of value to the company. It makes sense for the company to pay him to maintain that value. And so we're going to combine that income with, again, a very realistic expectation of I'm going to get rent for the building, and the company is going to pay someone rent. And so it's just a question of, is the company paying something close to market, or is it, is the expectation on the founder's generation that the company's going to pay 5x market rent? Well, we probably got to revisit that. Right. That's going to be a question.
Yep.
But if we can have those conversations when it is, and business owners often talk about, yeah, I think I'm going to leave the business in 3 to 5 years. And with experience, I've come to recognize that the 3 to 5 year time frame is often a perpetually renewing 3 to 5 years. Right? But so sometimes it's easy to say, okay, let's say that it's 4 years later, 4 years from today, and you've decided that you're going to leave, and let's talk about what that looks like. And then it's not a game, but it's a little more intellectual problem solving. Well, what if we did this? And we think market rate on the real estate is X, and X plus a consulting contract is this, and dad will be old enough that they'll have Medicare and they won't have personal insurance expenses. And a big question is, the founder generation, Gen 1, needs to understand how much money they're actually taking out of the business. Because if all of your entertaining has been paid for by the company, your cars, your car insurance, your gas, your maintenance has been paid for by the company. We worked with clients where their actual income was 2x their paycheck.
Yeah, I could see that.
And they didn't recognize that until I showed them the numbers. And so I think it's important to, and this goes back to the idea of a level set conversation. What does it look like today? And if we can understand what it looks like today, then I think we can understand a timeline that's realistic, and then discuss, okay, in order to get to the lifestyle you say you want from this starting point, you're going to be in the business for another 7 years. And then the clients, not Josh, the clients go back and look at the list of expenses that they put into their plan and says, maybe we don't need to spend every winter on Kiowa Island in a 6-bedroom condo. Maybe we
do.
But maybe we do. I'm not here to judge. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things is I am not the one to tell you whether you should have the NFL package on your pay-per-view or the condo on Kiowa. That's not my job. And I don't even really need to be in the room when you have that fight.
Right.
Just next time you come in, let me know who won, and we'll go from there.
Right. Yeah, I always tell people, I'm not judging your spending.
Right.
I want to make sure that you are spending money on the things that are important to you. So as we're looking at all of these things, there's going to be some things that we find that you're like, why are we spending money on this? Like, this really isn't important to us. Just because everybody else in our neighborhood does this doesn't mean we have to do this. So
No,
that's always a conversation for
yes,
sure.
no, that is perfect. No, I think that's a fundamental piece of the conversation, right? Is helping clients identify their value and their visions. What are the things that I think are important? And then how do we help the client align their capital, their money, their time, and their attention to those values, to that vision?
And that's got to be part of the conversation when you're talking about transitioning family business.
Certainly. And that's a big part of the conversation when we talk about what's going to be next. Right?
Yeah,
Go ahead, please.
So I've got a burning question for you.
Yes.
There are situations where a business owner has one or more children who are not active in the company. And in this case, you ask your clients a very important question. Do you want to treat your children equally or fairly? So tell us what you mean by that.
So the issue, and it came up with a family that was transitioning the business to the daughter, and the daughter had been working in the business, and two children that were not involved in the business and were never going to be involved in the business. And there was several estate planning conversations with the owner couple, and talking about, well, if we do this with the successor daughter, then we have to value the business, and very complicated mathematical equations being drawn on pieces of paper to try and come up with an equal inheritance for the children that were not involved in the business. And Dad, in his style, said he's the one who asked, do you want to treat them equally or do you want to treat them fairly? And what I think he meant by that was there's a level of risk that the daughter is taking by putting her inheritance into a business, into a single business, that from the financial advisor perspective, that's far more risky than the well-diversified portfolio of investments that we may have if she were given a lump sum. And so we need to recognize that there's some discount there. And what I think he was really getting at was, think about this as treating your children fairly, and don't spend so much time getting completely wrapped up in trying to value the business and value other assets and trying to make sure that they balance out to the dollar. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is pass on a legacy to the three children and make it work.
Well, and I think having those conversations in an open manner with your kids is very important. You know, I mean, to me, it's like when my dad goes to heaven, if he gives my brother a larger share of the company, to me, that would be fair. My brother's worked in the business, you know, for longer than I have. I mean, I exited the business 12 years ago. He's given an extra 12 years of hard work. And I know how stressful, you know, the industry that they're in is, you know, machine tools, and that can be grueling. So you're right. It's not always fair, is not always equal 50-50 or a third.
Exactly.
So I think that's something that, and even just you giving permission to someone to say, I am giving you permission to not treat your children equally. And treating them equally may not be fair, because that person that's working in the business with the blood, sweat, and tears, I mean, they might be able to go work somewhere else and make more, but they are part of this legacy because they believe in the family business.
Right. Exactly. And I think it's important to mention, so I don't forget to bring it up. Sometimes the answer is that the founding generation should sell the business to an outside interest, that perhaps the children don't have the interest, don't have the skills, the aptitude to carry on the business, and they would be happier getting a check. They'd be happier with support for their kids, the third generation's college expenses, right? And so sometimes the answer isn't, well, we need to bring son or daughter into the business. Sometimes that's not the answer that treats everybody fairly.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. So what advice would you give to business owners whose kids are still little? Are there things that they should be thinking about or doing now that might make a future transition more successful? Because I will say, like, my brother and I, our first jobs were for my dad. Now, then we went in and did other jobs.
Right.
In high school and college, we did the, doing the fast food thing, etc. But,
Yep.
I think my brother's first job was mopping floors out in the shop. And I distinctly remember helping my dad balance his checkbook the first year in business, which I'm not sure I think it was like 10 months that he had balanced it. That was my summer job, was balancing the checkbook. He did kind of give us... Yeah, I mean, he did kind of give us a taste of things. And, he also started us at the bottom of our positions. I mean, like, I started as a staff accountant after I got my accounting degree, and my dad didn't hire me until there was a position open. And,
nice.
My brother started as the lowest level electrician, and he worked his way up into upper management and sales. So
I am sure that there are studies that would tell us that the most successful successor generation, Gen 2, is the generation that starts at the bottom and works their way up and understands every piece of the business. And I think starting with children that are too young to inherit the business, I think the best thing, and certainly the thing that Dad did with me that got me into working with him, was telling me stories about clients and letting me see from his perspective what his job looked like and understand how he saw the value in what he did and how he saw those interactions. And Dad said, and I'm sure you understand this, but Dad said when I'd been working with him for 6 or 7 months, we were talking about a case that we were working on together, and Dad said, you, Josh, understand me better than anybody else in the family because you've seen the 9 to 5, that's 8 or 9 hours that nobody else in the family sees. And so I think the idea would be bring the child into the business in whatever way makes sense to justify the summer job. But the real value is, wherever possible, include your child in the process. We're going to go see a supplier and I'm going to bring my son or my daughter along with me and explain to the people we're going to see, this is my daughter. She's thinking maybe she's going to be interested in the business. I wanted her to see this part of it. Is it okay with you if she sits in on the meeting? If she's a teenager, you say, the best thing you can do is take notes.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I love that.
To understand, what did you see? What did you hear? And then debrief after the meeting's over with the child about, okay, what did you see happen? And then explain, this is what happened from my perspective. And that the child will then start to understand, oh, his meeting with this supplier, who he's known for 30 years, took 15 minutes and it occurred at the service counter and they were drinking Diet Cokes together. And mostly they just talked about UK basketball.
Yeah.
Right. And then this other meeting, they were in a boardroom and dad was wearing a tie and he was nervous. And why were you nervous about that one? Right now, the child's beginning to understand, what's this business actually look like?
Yeah. Well, and what better way for them to figure out young if it's something they want to do rather than,
Yes.
just graduate from college and get plunked down in the business and a year or two later feel like, oh my God, I don't like this at all.
Right. No, and we had a group of construction engineers. There were 4 partners, I believe, and dad was doing key man life insurance. And the deal was, it was a buy sell. So the idea was, if something happened to one of the 4 partners, the deceased partner's estate would have the proceeds of a life insurance policy that they could use to buy them out, keep everything safe. And one of the partners wouldn't sign up, wouldn't agree. So dad goes to talk to the partner who wouldn't agree. And the partner said, I want my shares of the business to go to my son because I want my son to be in the business. And dad said, okay, that's great. Where's your son going to school? Oh, he's going to Cassidy Elementary in Lexington. And dad said, wait, how old is your son? Oh, he's 8. And dad said, okay.
What if you die tomorrow? That's going to be a problem.
What if you die tomorrow? What if your 8-year-old, sometime between age 8 and age 23, decides that he doesn't want to be a construction engineer?
Which is a distinct possibility.
And who are you to decide for your son that this is what he needs to be when he grows up? And I think that potentially can be a very difficult conversation, particularly when you get into a business that is, and there are a few of them out there still, get into a business that's in its 3rd or 4th generation.
Yeah, it's almost an expectation.
There's an expectation that someone is going to take over the business. And like everything in this process, my answer to that is we need to have several conversations about this because the answers are rarely the answer that you get the first time, right? The position that a parent takes or a child takes the first time they have this conversation is rarely the position that they wind up in after some discussion. But the value is in the conversation.
Well, Josh, I think you and I could probably talk for another 45 minutes on this subject.
Easily.
But unfortunately, we are getting close to the end of our time. But thank you so much for being here. This has truly been an enlightening discussion about family business. And if someone wants to connect with you about your services, we're going to put your website and all your social media links in the show notes so that
Wonderful.
They can connect with you because you work with people all over the country, correct?
I do indeed.
Awesome. And I know Bill has been lurking in the background, and I'm sure he wants to chime in a little bit.
I have been lurking in the background, and I could listen to this conversation for another 45 minutes. Just to be fair, it is really good. And you got on the topic that I was going to ask him about if you didn't, which is, did anybody ask you whether you wanted the business or not? Did your dad say, "Hey, Josh, do you want this business? Do you want to do this?" And you've addressed that. And you addressed it in a terrific, thorough way. So I'm just going to leave by reminding people that the name of this podcast is Money is Emotional. It's emotional for everybody, not just Christine's clients, not just me, but everybody. And I thought, Josh, you did a terrific job addressing an emotional conversation for a lot of people in a very logical, rational way. So thank you for that. And in the spirit of disclosure, I should say, by the way, I do work with Josh on his podcast,
Yay.
Transition Talks.
Yes.
And so that it's like, for those of you who enjoy Christine's conversations, I think you would very much enjoy Josh's as well. You got a pretty good sense of what he's about and the values that he holds, which are, important to know. Christine, now we know how to get a hold of Josh. How do we get a hold of you?
Yes, the best way is on my website, which is christineluken.com. If you're interested in one-on-one financial coaching, either for individuals or couples, and of course, if you're a woman who wants to increase your financial knowledge, the doors for the Wealthy Woman Book Club are now open, and we welcome you to come inside.
And congratulations. I understand it is off to a banging start.
It is.
That's great.
We're having a lot of fun.
Very good. Very good. For those of you who are listening to this conversation and this podcast for the first time who aren't subscribers, why not? This is easy. Just reach out and hit the follow button. Then every time Christine drops a new episode of this podcast, you'll be notified and you could give it a listen. I would ask that you also, if you enjoy this conversation, share it with people. Let people know about it. Word of mouth is an irreplaceable promotion tool. And we thank you for your time spent listening to it and maybe sharing it with others. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of Christine. Thank you so much for listening today. And I'll sign off reminding you that you can go out today and make today a great day or not. You do have a choice. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Money is Emotional podcast. To get in touch, visit our website at www.christineluken.com or drop us a line at hello@christineluken.com. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Christine Luken. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your advisor, tax professional, or other qualified financial professional with any questions you may have regarding your personal finances.